is funded.
That's not morally.
But ICE is funded.
ICE is not funded. If
ICE is funded through the one big beautiful bill.
Well, it needs to be funded beyond that, which is.
Well, but how does that answer
the original
you just
shutdown,
gave?
which is Democrats wanting to circumvent the fact
Donald
that
Trump,
they didn't win an election and they couldn't change the law.
Donald Trump is the president. It's his DHS. It's his ICE. Republicans have full control of government, House, Senate, White House. So why are you giving fear porn examples of the failings of this?
Hey, pull up a chair, because this one right here is exactly what it looks like when someone comes to a policy debate with a strategy instead of an argument. This is Alex Michelson's program. Brian Tyler Cohen on one side, progressive commentator, YouTuber, and someone who came prepared with facts. Caroline Sunshine on the other side, former Trump White House staffer, former Deputy Communications Director for the 2024 Trump campaign, and someone who came prepared with something else entirely. The topic is the DHS funding standoff, TSA agents working without pay, Coast Guard unfunded, and a government that controls the House, the Senate, and the White House somehow unable to keep its own agencies running. Cohen says it is by design. Sunshine says it is the Democrats' fault. And in between those two positions is everything you need to know about how this administration actually operates. We're going to talk about the mask debate. We're going to talk about ICE killing people in the streets. We're going to talk about the voter suppression bill hiding underneath all of this. And we're going to talk about what it means when a former White House staffer sits on television and tells you she is fine with federal workers walking off the job. This channel exists for exactly this kind of moment. If you are not subscribed yet, do it right now, because we do not let this stuff slide. Let us get into it.
Welcome back. Good to see you as our returning champion. I'll start with you. What is going on? Why can't the government come to a deal and get this thing done?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that Donald Trump wants to leverage Americans' pain so that he can try and exploit that so that he can pass a voter suppression bill. I mean, at the end of the day, we know that there were a ton of different options to actually get this thing done, to get TSA funded. The Democrats put forward 9 standalone bills to fund TSA. Donald Trump rejected them. Senator Kennedy, a Republican senator, admitted that Donald Trump rejected it. And so he wanted the pain because for him, that pain is a tool. It is a way for him to avail himself of whatever he can to get what he needs, which is a voter suppression bill, and he would use Americans' pain to get there.
There's a lot for you to unpack there.
Well, I'll just start with a question, which would be, why was it okay for Democrats to fund ICE under Biden and Obama, but now it's a problem under Trump?
That's a great question. It's because ICE can't stop shooting and killing Americans in the streets. They did it to Renee Good. They did it to Alex Preddy. And so Democrats wanted some.
Well, they stopped after that.
Well, they stopped. Thank God they stopped after that.
I mean,
but I think 2 is probably enough.
Yeah.
And so Democrats were asking for some very common sense conditions to be met, which include no masks. Pretty reasonable.
No masks from the party who wanted to tell everybody for years in this country they had to do nothing but wear masks during COVID, to be clear.
This is law enforcement.
And why are they having to wear masks?
Why are they having to wear masks right now? Because they don't want to be identified for
doxed, because they don't want to be doxed by Democrat lawmakers.
There is no other law enforcement agent.
ICE, they can't carry out their mission.
There is no other law enforcement agent.
These are real people who are worried about going home to their families, and they're doing a job which is to enforce the laws of our country that are on the books.
Well, if they were doing those laws properly, the way any other law enforcement agency has for the last 250 years, they wouldn't need to cover their faces, but they're not. They're killing people on the streets, and we've seen numerous instances of that.
I'm glad you bring up killing people on the streets. So what would you say to the family of Sheridan Gorman, who was killed last week by an illegal immigrant who entered our country in 2023 and had a detainer out and an arrest warrant that wasn't fulfilled? What would you say to her family as to why it's okay to not fund ICE, whose job it would be to make sure that, 1, he was never here, and 2, that we've gotten rid of him? What would you say to her family?
Look, I'm sad for anybody who passes away or who is tragically killed. We have had ICE, and we've had immigration enforcement in this country for years and years and years, and they've managed to do it without slaughtering people in the streets. And so I think that if we don't have an agency,
that's what you're going to tell her family?
If we don't have an agency,
you're going to look in the eyes of her grieving parents.
But Caroline, which of the demands, the idea of the no masks, the warrant, what is your problem with? Let's start with the masks. I mean, why should police don't wear masks?
Well, the problem is that again, this is why I asked you originally, why was it okay under Obama, why was it okay under Biden to carry out these deportations with zero fanfare? And now what has happened is
it not more, but it's not more aggressive in the streets, especially, and maybe it'll change now with Mark-Wayne Mullen and no Chad Bavino, but there was an aggressive, in-your-face push in cities like Los Angeles and Minneapolis that we did not see quite the visible, in-your-face push under the Biden administration. You'll admit that, right?
Why did we have to be so aggressive? And part of it is because when you look at the deaths of Alex Preddy and Renee Good, what makes me so sad is the rhetoric from Democrats turned these people into non-law abiding citizens who weren't protesting. They were obstructing
are you
ICE
saying that
operations.
Alex Preddy was not a law-abiding citizen?
No, absolutely not.
He was holding his phone.
And he also kicked a federal vehicle in the back, which is damaging federal property.
11 days earlier.
Damaging federal property. That's a felony.
That's not license to
You
kill
asked me
somebody.
if it was criminal behavior.
That's not
That's a
license to
felony.
kill
Somebody should not be killed for that, right?
But of course not.
Yeah.
But he was obstructing law enforcement operations because he and Renee Good existed in this ecosystem that told them this is a virtuous thing to show up and obstruct basic law enforcement operations, where all ICE is doing is enforcing the current laws that are on the books, 3 U.S. Code 1825. If you don't like the laws that are on the books, change them, but that would require winning elections, which Democrats didn't do. You can't now obstruct the enforcement of the laws that are on the books. That's overthrowing democracy. That's undermining the will of the American people.
We've got this weird situation now where ICE actually is funded for a long time because of the big, beautiful bill. But what's not being funded is TSA, right? And the Coast Guard and other parts of Homeland Security.
It's all by design. Again, the Democrats were putting forward these bills. It was Trump himself unilaterally who decided that he didn't want this stuff funded because he wanted to exploit the pain that Americans were feeling at the airports. And so he told them, no, because we're not going to do anything until we can get the Save America Act passed. And if that means that we don't fund TSA, then let's not fund TSA. So can you at least admit that we had a solution here right in front of us, that the Democrats and Republicans both conceded that there was a solution, and that Donald Trump unilaterally wanted to leverage that pain to get what he wanted politically?
Well, let me just on TSA really quick. I'm okay with some of the TSA agents walking off a job because every time I'm at an airport, I usually see like 7 TSA agents standing around and one of them doing the job. So I'm actually okay with that. But on the fact of leveraging pain, let's talk about the pain again of Sheridan Gorman, who just last week in our country, I just want everybody to picture this. She is an 18-year-old woman who is out watching the Northern Lights with her friends, taking selfies, thinking about what she's going to post on social media, and instantly a bullet rings out, hits her head. She's killed instantly by an illegal immigrant who should have never been here in the first place. Again, came in 2023. ICE's whole job is to get people like that out of our country. It is not morally defensible to defend a nation that allows criminals like that to stay in our country.
ICE is funded.
That's not morally.
But ICE is funded.
ICE is not funded. If
ICE is funded through the One Big Beautiful Bill.
Well, it needs to be funded beyond that, which is.
But how does that answer the example you just
Shutdown,
gave?
which is Democrats wanting to circumvent the fact
Donald
that they didn't win an election and they couldn't change the law.
Donald Trump is the president. It's his DHS. It's his ICE. Republicans have full control of government, House, Senate, White House. So why are you giving fear-porn examples of the failings of this government when your party is in charge?
Okay, so
but don't you agree that ICE is itself important, and the idea of taking out criminal illegal aliens that have convicted of other crimes is a good thing?
I think the idea of immigration enforcement is important. I think that ICE, as it stands right now, is beyond repair. I think that this agency is fundamentally broken.
Who's supposed to do the job that she's just talked about?
Who's supposed to save Sheridan Gorman?
I think that
it's a good thing that we allowed her killer to stay in our country. It's a good thing that she's dead. You want to talk about exploiting pain? It's a good thing that she's dead.
At a bare minimum.
Yes or no?
At a bare minimum,
she would not be dead.
Let's go one at a time.
They need these conditions put in place, which include having insignia or being able to identify yourself, not wearing masks, having warrants signed by judges, and no ICE at the polls come November. I think those are all pretty reasonable conditions.
And what about the pain of Sheridan Gorman's family?
Again, I answered that question. It's tragic when anybody gets killed.
And just want to follow up on something you said. I mean, for the TSA agents who are hardworking people who are going without pay now for a month, I mean, how is that okay? Why is that good? I mean, I know you just sort of like laughed at that some of them are standing around, but these are people who have jobs, who are dependent on this money, and they're going to work every day and not getting paid.
Yes, and that's why I wish Congress as a whole, and you mentioned my party, and I will knock my party in this, Republicans control both chambers of Congress. And the one thing I will give Democrats is Democrats are excellent politically at sticking together when it comes to votes. Republicans have never figured that out, both under the first Trump administration and under this Trump administration. They do not have the grit and the toughness that President Trump has in terms of forcing through an agenda. I will give that to Democrats because Republicans right now could force this through and could force a situation where you don't have to go up against this kind of opposition with Democrats. It's nonsense. They need to learn to wield power better.
Get rid of the filibuster?
Yes, and President Trump has said that, and I support that.
You know what? I support it too. I think this is a rare moment of compromise because Republicans have been using the filibuster as a tool to prevent any meaningful legislation from getting passed. It is inherently anti-democratic, and so I would absolutely be in favor of nuking the filibuster.
Well, there you go. We can get the SAVE Act passed, right?
There you go.
I think.
So you agree we should pass the SAVE Act?
I do not think we should pass the SAVE Act.
Of course, the institutional argument against that is there's a lot of bad legislation that is sometimes stopped by the filibuster, and it is the one way of stopping government from moving too quickly. But, you know, we'll see. That's what the Republican leadership would say, John Thune.
Well, the Republican,
yeah. Well, they know that they have a lot more to lose by allowing the filibuster to be nuked than they do have to gain.
All right.
Let us start with the most important thing Brian Tyler Cohen said in this entire exchange, because it is the thing that should have ended the debate before it really started. Donald Trump rejected 9 standalone bills to fund the TSA. 9. Not 1. Not 2. 9 separate opportunities to keep federal workers paid, keep airports functioning, keep Americans moving through the country without chaos. And he said no every single time. This is not speculation. This is not Democratic spin. Republican Senator Kennedy admitted it on the record. Trump rejected the bills, which means everything that followed, every delayed flight, every unpaid federal worker, every moment of manufactured airport chaos was a choice. A deliberate, calculated political choice made by the man who controls the entire federal government. So when Caroline Sunshine sits across from Cohen and tries to make this a both sides conversation, the math does not work. You cannot have a both sides conversation about a problem that one side created on purpose. That is not balance. That is cover. Now let us talk about what Trump actually wanted in exchange for funding the TSA and the Coast Guard. A voter suppression bill. That is what Cohen calls it, and that is what it is. The leverage being applied to the American traveling public, to the federal workers showing up without paychecks, to the Coast Guard keeping shipping lanes safe. All of it was being used as a bargaining chip to extract a specific political outcome that has nothing to do with border security and everything to do with making it harder for certain Americans to vote. That is the transaction. That is what was being bought and sold while people missed flights and federal workers stressed about their mortgages. The mask debate is where this conversation gets philosophically important, and I want to spend real time on it because it is not just about masks. Sunshine's argument is that ICE agents need masks to avoid being doxxed by Democratic activists, that without anonymity they cannot safely carry out their mission and go home to their families. And look, on the surface that sounds reasonable. Law enforcement safety is a legitimate concern, except here is the problem with that argument when you apply any pressure to it at all. Every other law enforcement agency in the United States of America operates without masks. Local police, state troopers, FBI agents making arrests, federal marshals, DEA, ATF. None of them routinely cover their faces while conducting operations on American soil. They have badge numbers, they have insignia, they are identifiable. Because accountability requires identifiability. Because when a law enforcement officer uses force, the public has a right to know who used it and under what authority. That is not a radical position. That is the basic architecture of law enforcement accountability that this country has operated under for 2.5 centuries. When you remove that identifiability, you do not just protect officers from harassment, you protect them from accountability. And in a moment when ICE has shot and killed American citizens, that distinction is not academic. It is life and death. Alex Prey and Renee Good. Let us say their names clearly, and let us be honest about what happened to them. These were Americans, not undocumented immigrants, not criminals. Americans, who were present near ICE operations and were killed. Sunshine's response to Alex Prey's death is to note that he kicked a federal vehicle 11 days earlier and damaged federal property. That is what she reached for, a kicked vehicle, as a justification for why the ecosystem around his death was his own fault. Nobody should be killed for kicking a vehicle. Sunshine said so herself, and then in the very next breath explained why the environment that got him killed was actually the fault of democratic rhetoric. That is not an argument. That is an attempt to distribute blame so widely that nobody specific has to be held accountable for anything specific. Now Sheridan Gorman, an 18-year-old woman watching the Northern Lights with her friends, killed by an undocumented immigrant who had an outstanding detainer and arrest warrant. That is a tragedy. Full stop. No qualification, no deflection. A young woman is dead and her family is in pain, and that is real. And it matters. But here is what Cohen is right about and what the host and Sunshine both refused to actually engage with. ICE is funded. ICE was funded through the big beautiful bill. Republicans control the House. Republicans control the Senate. Republicans control the White House. If an undocumented person with an outstanding warrant and a detainer was not removed from the country, that failure happened on this administration's watch, under this administration's leadership, with this administration's funding. You cannot spend years telling the American public that only Republicans can fix the border, win every branch of government, and then point to the failures of border enforcement as a reason to blame Democrats. That is not accountability. That is a magic trick. And Cohen named it correctly. It is fear porn. It is the deliberate use of genuine tragedy to short-circuit policy analysis and prevent the public from asking the obvious question, which is if your party runs everything, why is everything still broken? The TSA moment is the one that should follow Caroline Sunshine around for the rest of her career. She said on television that she is okay with TSA agents walking off the job because in her experience at airports, she usually sees 7 agents standing around and 1 doing the work. Let that sit with you. A former White House staffer, someone who worked in the building that is supposed to serve the American people, looked at federal workers being forced to come to work without pay because of a political stalemate her party created, and said she is fine with them walking out. Not because she wants them to get paid, not because she thinks the standoff should end, but because she does not think they work hard enough to deserve her concern. These are working class people. Transportation security officers are not pulling 6-figure salaries. They are showing up every day to screen your bags and keep you safe on airplanes, and they are doing it right now without knowing when their next paycheck is coming. And the person who used to work in the White House thinks that is fine because she finds airport security lines inconvenient. That tells you exactly who these people work for, and it is not you. Cohen's conditions for ICE funding are worth reading clearly because Sunshine never actually argued against a single one of them on the merits. No masks. Warrants signed by judges before operations. Insignia identifying agents. No ICE presence at polling locations during elections. Every single one of those conditions is a basic accountability measure. Every single one of them is the kind of oversight that every other law enforcement agency in this country already operates under. None of them prevent ICE from doing legitimate enforcement work. What they prevent is ICE doing illegitimate work without consequences. And that is apparently the problem. Here is the bottom line. This debate is not really about DHS funding. It is about whether the American public is going to keep accepting a political strategy built entirely on manufacturing crises, exploiting the grief of real victims, and then pointing fingers in every direction except at the people actually holding the levers of power. Republicans run the government. The TSA funding crisis is their crisis. The ICE accountability failures are their failures. The voter suppression bill hidden inside a funding negotiation is their bill. And no amount of invoking Sheridan Gorman's name changes that arithmetic. Grieve the losses. All of them. Sheridan Gorman and Alex Prey and Renee Good and every person caught in the machinery of a broken system being deliberately kept broken for political advantage. Grieve them all and then ask who actually has the power to fix it and why they keep choosing not to. That is the question that does not get asked enough. This channel asks it every single video. If that matters to you, subscribe right now, share this with somebody who needs to hear it, and keep showing up. I'm Lucas Stowe and I will see you in the next one.